Okay guys, Max here with tutorial for your Mortek Guard. We'll be doing good solid tabletop, a little more than 1 hour each piece. It's a little long and bit boring tutorial because it's every brush stroke I record. So no magical jumps, no magical tricks in there. So it's Visivik. What you see is what you get. So if you are beginning your painting journey, it could be very useful for you. Feel free to jump a bit and feel free to use your own color scheme. I just show you some basic tricks, some basic ways how to do the bones and the blue armor and the grayish rims. And that's all guys. Let's focus on the middle one and let's keep going. It's just the regular dude who wants to stab you in the gut. It's one of the many, so we'll do nothing too much fancy here, but I use a lot of colors and I use a lot of shades. So it could be a little bit time consuming, but if you're doing a bunch of them at the same time, it will be okay. It's a construct from the bones. So I usually start with the brown. I have snake leather brown. I use very wide variety of colors from different brands, so try to find, if you do Citadels or Army Painter or Vallejo, just use the the snake brown. So I start with a flat brush because, to be honest, I don't care about the overlaps that much. You can start with bone white, it's okay, but I think it's a little bit flat in the end, because always it's, you always know how many colors did you use, because the feeling is richer when you use more colors, even though you can't see them at the first sight. So I usually start with something darker, and again, the Mortek Guards or the Ossiarch bonereapers are constructed from the bones, so they shouldn't have the same color as the regular skeletons or some other zombies, because they are built differently. So we would like to have them built differently, from different colors. The base coat is quite easy. Well, just try to put the color everywhere. It could be, too tempting to use the water diluted color, but we use a lot of washes, so we want to have the color on the top, not at the bottoms, so try to not dilute it that much. You can see I use water here and there, but not that much. Okay, so it could happen in the starting of the figure that you put somewhere a lot of colors. For example, I have it here in the face. There is too much color, so I just brush my brush and thin the color down by just regular brush strokes over it. Well, it's technically it's the only thing I care about at this stage, not to put too much color on it, because it could ruin some details. Not that these guys have some details, they have nice poses. I like, the bones and stuff, but the details are just not there, Okay, so it seems like we have our bones finished. So let's move to another color. I'll just have a look. It's hard that you can't tell which is bone and which is not, because the armor looks very similar, but when we are doing the washing stages, it just doesn't, you don't care anymore. Okay, so we can wait until it, dries, or we just go on and do other stuff as well. So I'll take my dark blue again. It's up to what blue do you use. I use the midnight blue, which I can't see now. Where is it? Okay, so here it is. The blue is somewhat tricky because you need to have a nice coat of it. So as you can see, I just use the regular paper. I don't care that much about, you know, the palettes. And my blue is not good, as you can see it, because it's very thin color. Well, but I like to use it as a ink, so I just put extra layer in a while. Trick is that we want to have, you know, very dark color. That's the usual color of Ossiarch bonereapers. As it's green or purple. Well, to be honest, any weird dark colors are okay, but I choose the regular one here. So there is the blue, and the trickiest part of those soldiers I found to be not the armor, but the bones which are not theirs. You know, all this weird part on the armor, you know, these ends and on the shield. It's obvious that those bones are not theirs, so it should be a different color. But to be honest, well, it's very hard to have two very similar colors on, well, next to each other. So I usually choose one. You know, you can ignore that those are bones, and you can go with metallics. I sometimes use copper, or you have to try to be very similar with the color, but to start with a different, you know, base. So I will do the bone stuff here, but I will start with the gray, as you will see in a sec. Okay, so the blue is quite okay, I guess. Not fancy, but we are doing tabletops. And if you are doing Ossiarch bonereapers, you are committed to do a lot of painting. So I guess that the tabletop is okay with you. Well, I always found it strange that those bones are not, I'm not sure if those are bones or armor. So at some of my models it's armor, and at some it's just bones. You can see I paint over the wet part, and I don't care, because, you know, we will do the bases, then we will do our washes, and then we start to care about details. Okay, so the blue is done. So next color we'll be using is the gray, but because it's not dry yet, I will do now the green one, and I'll start with the turquoise. It's hard to do. Okay, and I use on the waistcloth, nothing else, so it should be a little bit distinct. So again, not hard feelings, just put the color in there. I always recommend to do a strong color scheme than to be too fond of details, because you can't tell details from apart, and usually when it's on table you are not looking at it by magnifying glass. But if you have a poor color scheme, oh, tricky part between the legs, if you get the poor color scheme, you can tell it, well, immediately that those figures are dull. So just try, and don't try to be, you know, unique here and there. Of course, you don't have to paint your bones in red or pink. Well, you can if you wish, but it's up to you. Okay, so the cloth is okay. Well, now I will use a different brown. Of course, if you are lazy, well, I use the beast brown. It's game color beast brown, probably different names in different brands. If you're lazy, you can of course use the leather you use on the bones. I paint the inside of the shield with it. If you're lazy, you can use the same brown, but I was telling at the beginning, when you use more colors and more layers, it always pays up. You know, no, not all the layers will be seen, not all the colors will be seen, but the result is very, very different when you are not lazy and when you are lazy. Well, like in everything in life. Okay, so I would say it's our time to put some grace on for the, well, different bones. I start with quite soft shade. It's not very dark green, very dark gray, but who cares? Well, we'll be putting a lot of wash on top of it. Okay, so just the gray on the shield. Well, a little bit bluey here. Well, blue is good series. Well, put in here. Again, I'm not too much fond of details because, hey, we will get them straight at the end. Well, you can hear some serious overlaps here. Well, I tried to, get the whole video of everything so you can see the errors, because at the end there will be none. But during the process, it's quite normal, to do mistakes. And if you are too keen not to do them during the process, it will take a lot of time to get in there, and the result will be very, very similar. Okay, so, well, there is a lot of gray on the armor here, and this part is a little bit trickier. Well, maybe I should get a better brush. And now we have more or less, there's few details from brown, like the strap on the shield, but we are now more or less ready. Well, and you will usually think that this guy looks horrible. Yes, that's normal. That's a base coat. You just have to start somewhere. You can undercoat it, with the spray for bone color, but, well, I find it, well, not that important. Of course, I will do some metallics for, where is it? Here. For the sword, of course, and if you're opting for not using my color, just give up. If you're opting not to use the second bone color, and I recommend doing, the brass, well, it's a good time to do it now. But it's up to you. I will be showcasing all color schemes at the same page, so it's up to you. What are you deciding to see? Or two. You can see whatever you wish, but just watching tutorials doesn't give you more skill. So I recommend, if you have a lot of Mortek Guard, just start painting them and don't worry too much about the results. The results will come if you try hard, and of course, we're doing it for fun. I know a lot of you just like more the game. Well, I have it for Warcry or Warhammer, but, well, to be honest, the painting is very fun, and it should stay this way. If you're doing it too hard, too stressed, well, it's not fun anymore. So I recommend just do it as long as it's fun for you. So if we'll need more details and it took like a billion seconds to do it, just don't do it. Not all parts of the figures can be seen. Not all parts of the figures are going to be watched by someone. Theoretically, you can see everything, but well, who will see it that close and who will care? When you are doing perfect miniatures, well, everybody will look at them, but until now, don't worry. They will just say, oh, it's okay, and nobody will look. Then your friends and your mom will look at it, and then you will get some gratitude. Okay, so the base colors are done. I give it some time to dry and we will go for the washing part. Okay, so before the washing starts, I will do one extra layer on the bones, and that's because the bones are, well, the most important part of the figure, of course. So, because there is most of it, so I will try to do it as nice as possible, and I'll do the old school layering, just um, thin down the color with water and the layer all which is up. But if you're afraid, it's okay to do old school dry brush here, because if you dry brush before washing, the texture, those tiny parts and bits of color which I hate about dry brush, won't be seen on the results, because the wash or the shade will cover it up. If you're not comfortable with the color, you can use a little blending technique, which means that I mix the original brown with the bone. So, um, it's more blended together, because there is not so much contrast on the colors. But it's up to you, because you can do the contrast here and start with more similar colors, or you can do the contrast during the washing, as you can see or not see, because the difference in colors here is not that big. I do one layer and then I will do a second layer of the pure bone white, but I believe the bone white should be almost the most light color of whole model, so you can start with it, because otherwise, well, you can't shade it in any way. I think it's easier to shade from dark to white than vice versa. So don't worry about starting dark and use a lot of colors, because we will be washing with the dark brown, so after the washing we will get a very, very dark skeleton, but we don't care. As you can see here, because the texture is very, very steep, we can use, well, it's hard to tell if it's layering or dry brushing, because I dilute the color with water, but I don't apply pressure too much, just by the tip of the brush, it goes up on those places where it should be. So you can argue that this is dry brushing, but the trick is always you want to find the top of the miniature of every detail to be lighter. But the trick is that when doing dry brush, because you have a dry brush, of course, there's are those fine particles which ruins the model. I don't like it at all. I try to avoid dry brush anywhere when it's possible. If you don't have the skill with the brush, and that's normal when you're beginning, just don't worry, use more washes and try to be bold with the layering technique. Well, it's almost done. This part takes quite some time, and I don't care, because it's, well, one of the most important part of the miniature. I still believe we can do it in 1 hour whole. Of course, I will be doing, the short part of this video, because I remember when I started that I wanted to see every stroke, so I can believe the authors what they are doing. There are some videos when they say, okay, let's apply the layers, and there's a cut, and in 10 seconds you have super perfect, showcase miniature, and you are wondering how did this happen. So these tutorials of mine are more for beginners, so you can see that it's work, it's nice work, but it's not that time consuming. And I believe that learning this as I call it, dry brush layering, not that precise layering, because in some tutorials about layering you see that it's a science, to put the right color in the right spaces. But I don't believe it. You just use the light hand like you're gently stroking the miniature, just patting it on a head, not hard work, and it will pay off. Your miniatures will soon look better. I'm blending my colors, and not many people does it because the beginners are usually scared of it. But to be honest, it's quite easy, and well, you can use some special palette for it. But well, I don't believe it's necessary. As you can see, I use only a paper. Well, if I'm desperate to get the right color, I use some, water palette, or special palette for acrylic colors. Or to be honest, I think the best works the papers for aquarelle or the watercolors. But it's up to you. You don't get everything from the tutorials. It's a fight with your inner self to find your special miniature painting powers. Okay, so as you can see, I got just a little snack, so not that time to dry it up properly. And here comes the blue from the blue. Can I say it? Blue from the blue? It doesn't make sense, but who cares? Okay. And now the color is nice. It's a little bit a honey color. That's not what we wanted, so I apply a very, very light layer, or my dry brush layer, of the original school white or bone school or whatever you are using. And we already got some nice depth of colors, of contrast. We have high contrast here. Well, by the way, good musician. And the trick is that you want contrast, so you can have the lights and shadows at the same time, but you don't want to have it too hard, because otherwise it looks too unrealistic. Well, unrealistic for undead skeleton moving around, but you know what I mean. I always try to see all the colors I use, so I leave some traces of the very dark brown we started with, but I want to have some spaces, some parts done with the the pure white, not not bubonic brown, sorry, bone white. Well, at the end you can add some pure white if you wish, but you have to be light on those basic colors, the white and the black, because they are pretty tricky. So I use it just a little bit at the end, but only if I missed my color scheme. And well, you maybe noticed that I changed my brush for the round one. But to be honest, I wanted to do pure layering, and then I switched to this easier technique. And well, maybe for a lot of you, this layering dry brush will be easier done with the flat brush. Well, it's up to you. If you don't have many brushes, I hope you have one flat, one round, and one precise, and that's all you need, yeah, for your whole life. Of course, trick is to have your brushes nice and clean, so they will survive and they have some tip. But for too much water, I just put it out. Well, you can put it on the fire, not water. I know my English is getting better. Okay, so well, as you see, I don't do the kneecaps. because well, they should be quite quite light, you know, very white. But I decided to use the green on them because the Ossiarch bone reapers are made from magic and they usually have some shiny eyes, maybe shiny eyes. But well, you have to put it somewhere so it's not weird, you know. And to be honest, on this figure, there's not much other spaces, other details we can use. So I will use their kneecaps. Well, it's a little bit weird, but why not? It's up to you. If I yes, opening the colors with my teeth. Well, your mom usually says it's not healthy for you, and it's not, but it's sometimes the only way. This is the way, you know. Okay, so the kneecaps with green. If I, well, I change my mind during the coloring all the time because sometimes you get colors wrong, you know, that you started with different scheme in your mind, but you did it differently, and then it's nice because, well, you have to use the nice ideas you get. And I put it in eye socket as well, but, well, don't worry, I just put it around the eye socket, all around, down and up. So no precise moves. Can you see it? It's like it's shining around. Not much shining, just like a big overlap and failure, but it will be okay. Okay, so now it's ready for washing up. If those figures are important for you, well, for example, if you do it for Warcry and you have like 4 of them, you could do another layer of the blue and before the washing, but I think for the tabletop it's okay. Now the bones are quite good, and with the washing everything will go down to combine. Well, sometimes you have to improvise, and if you're not improvising, you're doing it wrong. Yeah, it's good to see other people paint, but always try to come out with your special schemes, with your special colors, because otherwise you won't have that much fun, joy, and happiness with it. Okay, so the camera just don't want to, you know, to focus on the miniature, so you can have a good sight of my palette. Meantime, well, never mind, just putting on the blue. Okay, well, I think it's okay. Now I'm just a little bit more, you know, sorry, more precise, so I don't want to have that much overlapping now, because well, now it matters a little bit more. Okay, so now to the washing part. Okay, so with the washing or shading, because I use a lot of colors, but for the shades I use, well, nearly almost the Citadel ones. I use the black, you know, the non-oil, and I just put the black all around except the bones. You know, even on those second bones, the gray ones, I use a lot of it. And as you can see, all the miniature just get dark. Well, I'll do shading a lot, and you have to be bold for shading, you know, because, well, it's no time for precise work. You just put a lot of here and there and everywhere, because you have to, you know, to be swimming in the color, you know, no precise moves. Just put it there like your chips in the mayonnaise. No, just let it swim. If you overreact, if you put there too much of it, and as you can see, I switched the brush again on the large flat one. Well, it's not that large. Probably Citadel will have it like a medium. And if there is too much of the color, like here, there is a, you know, the lake, the black lake, I just, you know, suck it dry with my dried brush. It's okay again. We try to put shadows in the figures so we don't have to do it all by ourselves, you know, by layering or dry brushing. So that's why it's so useful to do it with the shades. Otherwise, you have to do it all by yourself, which is fun, but it's quite a lot of work, you know. So I have the black almost everywhere, you know. I use it on the green as well, on the kneecaps, because as you can see, I put a nice shadow around it, and that's what I wanted to do, you know, to distinguish it from the bones. If you want to have something light or radiating like the real light source, you should put a lot of dark around it so the light will come out, you know, lighter. With the black, you can do that. You outline the objects, you know, as this cloth. I outline it with the black, so it will, you know, be more distinguished because there is little chaos what's going on in these bones, you know. I use the black on the metallics as well. If you use one shade on half of the miniature, it will help it to come out, you know, more united. It's not like that every part is different color, different world, different shade, you know. That's not what we are going to have or what we are going to want. That's a cool way to say it. It's a wrong way to say it, but well, it's cool. Okay, so I believe I'll have the black everywhere I wanted it. I didn't use it on the skull and on the bones, and from inside the shield, it will be too much black and it will, you know, not be very well distinguished, so I didn't use it there. If you wish, you can, and if you dare, you can have more precise brush and put it in the eye sockets as well, because it's the same thing as with the kneecaps. And I try to put a little black in the mouth so it's even darker and blacker. And if you put it on the teeth, you can see that the teeth are now distinguished. That's something it's quite hard to do with the brush, you know, when you want to try to hit every teeth at once. So it's quite difficult to do with the brush, you know, with layering, but it's quite easy to do with the washing. As you can see, I am putting a lot of black in here because on some models, and this Mortek Guard is one of them, there is not clear line between the objects, you know, between, for example, the shoulder plate and the body. And by putting black in there, the line now becomes more distinguished and more, like to say, readable. You know what's going on, because, well, the sculpting is hard work. Probably I've not done it, but you can support it with your choices during painting. Well, I guess we are done with the black, and now it's time to put in the brown. I will use the Agrax shade. Don't forget to shake your shades very well, because otherwise they will come out shiny, and that's not what we want to have, especially not on, you know, on skeletons. We can have shiny part on some nights, and sometimes I do it that I use shiny washes, but not today, sir, not today. Okay, so I just have the Agrax Archade and I put a lot of it on the bones. Well, it's very, very dark, But don't worry, I will put it there because I want to, to fit in all those little gaps. But then when my brush, starts to not paint at all, because the paint is over, I will still paint, and to overlap the color to all the places. I don't use more color, I just borrow it from the dark spaces because now the color is already inside all those gaps, and I don't care about, the more raised areas. So I just borrow the color and put it there on more spaces. You just want to spread it in thin layer uniquely all around. And as you can see, thanks to 2 layers beneath it, it comes out quite well. I would say it's okay to call it finished if you're in a hurry, or if you don't want to spend more time on one of your zillions of skeletons. And I use the brown on the shield from inside, the wood as well, because, well, sometimes I paint the texture of the wood myself, but the shades do it for you, so no problem here. Okay, just have a look, because it's essential that you have the color on all the bones, because it's hard to do it afterwards, because the shades should be done in one time, in one big effort. And another, well, in other words, you have to be bold to use it right, because if you are timid, if you are shy with your washes or with your shades, it won't work. So I usually put it too much in there, and then I dry my brush and put it back, or thin it out by distributing it to a bigger area. But you have, okay, here it is again with the teeth, because I didn't like the black, so I put there more brown. Well, if you're wondering if my black is already dry, it is not. And that's the case because sometimes I don't want to have black all around. So here I can use the brown and black at the same time. For example, on the areas around the armor and around the bones. So I can, decide now if I like the black better or if I like the brown better. Now I have a look if it's all evenly colored, because it's weird when you put somewhere more dark and less dark color here and there, so you have funny spots. Well, it could be a skeleton with pigment disorder, but I don't want him to be. Okay, so the shades are okay, and now let it sit for quite a while. So time to make some curry and let it dry really well. Okay, now we have everything dry, and it's our time to do like the mid layers. So we see that we have a depth in all the colors, and now we are starting to build back the the middle tones. So I will doing it with Stonewall Gray, turquoise, and middle blue. I don't care how is it called in other companies. So let's start with the gray. The trick is that we are putting a layer of color which was already there, because we have this color and then we put the shade over it. So if you dilute it with a water, it's definitely the same color as on the most raised spots you have there. If you don't dilute it, it's definitely the lightest color in the area. So very gently we pull out all the edges all the lights. I usually work with the diluted colors, it's easier for me, but you can use more dry brush, but be careful because now we don't have to wash it anymore, so you can have the marks of the dry brush, the little stuff, little pigment all over your mini, so just be gentle. I prefer the diluted colors and old school layering. Well, it's a little bit more artistic work now because you have to be careful, but no big worries. If you put color somewhere you don't want to put it, you can wash over it with the shade, so it's easy to repair. And now it's also the time when you cover all the overlaps from the first generous strokes where we didn't care too much. Now it's time to care, so we try to correct all the overlaps now. Now we have to be gentle and look around if all the gray parts are similar gray. We don't want to have areas of light gray and too much areas of light gray. For example, we have right and left half of the shield and we need to get the colors very similar. So just focus on how much color you put in there and you should be okay. Okay, this part is what I don't like about the figure because it's raised really low, so it's very hard to get it and to put it in correct place. If you don't have the nerves, you can always do this part metallic, because I believe the metallic is for a lot of people much easier to do. So from this side, another shoulder plate, you know, I just the raised areas and the edges, that's the key. Because I don't like this part to be only gray, we put some more colors in there by washing it a bit, but not for generating the depths. Now we will be washing it now, or in a few moments we will be washing it just because of the color. That's another technique which is really useful. Okay, so the gray is done. Let's move on with the turquoise. We will be doing turquoise just on the cloth around the waist, and again we are using the same color as before washing. You know, the idea behind this is that you don't have to be that careful because you have the same color. You know, if you take the whole different color, it would be much harder to use it. Okay, so now we try to, you know, exaggerate the highlighted parts, correct all the overlaps we did wrong in the first place, and of course the edges. All right, not much work here. We don't want to ruin all these nice parts which the shade does without our effort, so don't be over enthusiastic here. And I guess we're done. We can highlight some parts later on, but I think it's okay now. Okay, and the maybe most or the most trickiest part is the armor, and we'll be using very light blue because we have to put in there some much harder contrast, so much harder shadows in here. Okay, so my focus gone crazy now last few minutes, sorry about that. Okay, so we try to put a high contrast in there, you know, just the line. That's how they do it in Games Workshop, I guess. So you can do the light on the edge of every plate. I like to exaggerate this shape of the shield, which is really nice. And this could be a good touch, finishing touch for your mini, because you know the shield is so huge that everybody will look at it. You know, even from afar, I believe that's one of the most important parts. So try to use your brush strokes well. Try to use, you know, the shape of every arm, every plate, so you can, okay, what's going on here? And maybe, just maybe, from the top, bottom, you know, you can do all the edge. It depends on how dark you want to have it, because usually they have very dark in there. So maybe we could use another non-oil over it. If you do so, try to put another highlight in there. On a few of the places, just put a harder color, you know, more color on there. So after the wash, there will be some places with more blue and less blue. Okay, so that was the easy part. Now the hard part with the arm plates. Because as the gray armor, these are not most detailed part of the mini. So you have to think out some of the shapes, you know, those half moons. And you know, I imagine this with the blue like that we are doing some electric effect. So all the edges, if you're not sure or you can't do, sorry about the sword, if you can't do all the stuff at once, you know, all the plate, and let the another shade do its magic. Okay, so right here, it's in the difficult angles there. And at the bottom back, it's even more important to put the shape correctly. See, because these plates could be done as a skeleton, you know, the bony stuff, or it could be done as an armor. And I usually like to do it this way because otherwise it's too bony. I know it's a skeleton warrior, but well, we don't want to have it all bones. I don't care about the details here. Maybe you want to do it more detailed, but I don't like all these bolts and screws in there. Okay, so another arm plate or the shoulder plate. Not much on his arms, hey? Okay. And again, here, the back plates, tricky. Try to imagine some parts which are raised, even though they are not there. We want to break all the big blue stuff. Okay, so that doesn't look that good, but don't worry, we will use the shade to correct it. Okay, so the middle shapes are done. Middle shades. Okay, I forgot one thing. If you did the green and the, you know, the jewel in his breasts and on his knees, it's time to highlight it as well. So I use the scorpion green, just a little highlights here and there, and just a little more highlight. Now a little bit more careful around the eyes, and now we try to hit the sockets as well, and try to put on. Don't try to put a real eye in there. Well, it's a skeleton, so just gently around the sockets. Okay, and the jewel, I made it in turquoise now with the scorpion green. It's one of my favorite green combination. Okay, nice and clean. Perfect. So the mid layers are done. And we will do another shading and highlights and we are done. Okay, so for the first part, we apply another layer of black wash, I mean the null oil shade. I use the shades from Citadel. So on the shield and on the blue armor. It's the shade as before, so we just put a generous amount in there. Yes, I switch my brushes, so I use the bigger one. Now that I cover it all, so it's super dark, but we can clearly see the blue lines. The shades aren't that strong, so they will cover all. And with this gray areas, I just put a little bit here and there, and not doing it for all area, you know. Now I dry my brush, and because I have it vertically, the bottom of the shield starts to be too black, and I want to, resemble the real parts, meaning that the plates are shiny at the edges and dark at the insides. So I just try to to take out all the blacks from the blue lines we drew before. Okay, that's enough. And I really like the black parts on the gray, here and there, because on the gray the black shade works the best. Okay, so again here I put all the black. I used a more precise brush. Again, I use it on the blue armor, but as you can see, I apply a generous amount and try to darken a little bit the gray. So it's more detailed and more together with the blue, because, well, I found this armor very weird. I'm not very fond of it. So I try to minimize the damage the sculpture's done. Well, of course, no excuses. But I believe that you will come out at very similar feeling when you're painting yours. Okay, so a lot of black on the blue armor, just a little tips on the gray. So, and the shield from behind, don't forget it. I forget it all the time, especially when it's not glued on. When I have it separately, I usually do it the next day when I found it under the table. Well, shit happens. Okay. If you wish, you can apply a little bit black on the hand or under the hand, so it's more darker here. And on the strap, because this place is very dark indeed, I put a little dark on it as well, because we don't want much shining from behind. Okay, so with the sword I apply another coat of normal oil. It's up to you, because I like when the weapons look older, and I try to apply more black on the bottom half, so it look a little bit more shaded. Well, I don't believe that you can actually see anything in there. Now, second part, what can you do with the shades is apply it specifically in the deep areas. So, for example, in the waist cloth, sorry, I just return the black in the deepest parts, where I now believe when it's dry, put too much light. You see, just the parts which should be done. As you can see, there is a little bit overlap. Don't care. Put a little black on it. There we go. If happens that you put too much light on it, you can always use the shade again and again and again. If you don't forget to shake it properly, well, it can be done in many layers on top of each other. Okay, so again, eyes and mouth, but now dry it a bit, take it out. Okay, so that's the black one. Now we will be applying the brown one over the black, so we have to wait until it dries. Okay, in the meantime, we finished the skulls, oh, well, the skull and the bones, and after the last washing and layering, I think we are done here. So I have some bone white around here, but because I want my layers to be, well, more precise and nicer, I mix it a little bit with the original brown. So again, we are trying to layer with very similar color as before, but well, it's easier when it's the same color. You can get a surprising results when you put there a surprising different colors, but now let's stick with the basics. Okay, so I just applying a little layer of the original or nearly original kind of color, but be very careful because now I believe that our color scheme is perfect. It's very nice color. Well, it's not traditional bone, but it's very bony and very nice, you know, highlighted and shadowed thanks to the shade. I believe that's the best citadel shade there is, you know, the Agrax Air shade. I use it, well, nearly on every mini I have. But it's up to you if you don't want to do that much work, and it's, well, reasonable if you have like thousands of these skeletons. You can apply straight the bone white. To be honest, I try to highlight with the mixed color, you know, the dark one, only the areas where I, well, put too much dark color, you know, because the shades does it. On some places you will have, you know, like the pool of the dark. Pool of the dark, that sounds like a, you know, some science fiction movie. Okay, back to the topic. So I just try not to overreact it, and it depends on how much time you want to spend on it. For me, it's like the most fun part, because otherwise it's just, you know, weird armor pieces which I'm not able to identify and not much details going on. If you're lazy and you're going to apply only the bone white, try to use it on the skull at least, because on face, even on this, you know, the dead face, another good name of a movie, it's good that you have more colors, because then you can have some facial expression, which again, it's quite hard with when you're dead. But you know, the different colors, the more layers, it's easier for you to do it. Okay, so here I'm go with the strategy that I'm going to do the edges of these bone thingies more light. Oh, there's a big mistake. No problem. Just dilute it with the water and take it back with the dry brush, and there's nothing. Oh, don't be afraid of doing mistakes. Painting is very good. Repairing, you can always paint it over. So let's have fun. No stress. Okay. So, well, there is a trouble that on the top of the head there are quite large areas. Not large when you compare it to the shield, for example, but on a face you want to have a lot of, you know, a lot of small surfaces connected. Otherwise it just look like, you know, dead skull. And we don't want to look at dead. We want to look at, you know, alive dead or undead, better to say. Okay, so just the final touches. Again, I used my layering dry brush, dilute with water, but with light hands, like with dry brush. Let the sculpt lead you. I really like the sculpture of those bones. Not much fond of all the other stuff, but the bones are super cool and super detailed. When you're working with very diluted color, you can be a little bit surprised how, you know, light it is, but when it dries, it's getting darker. So if you don't have much experience with it, be careful. Otherwise, dilute it just a bit so you don't have all the big stuffs in there. Okay, I usually highlight a bit all these spine, how is it called? All these spine spikes. Who cares? And oh, I believe we're more or less done. It depends. If you want to spend 10 hours on the figure, just keep going. Well, it's fun, and all the layers will be seen. All the work you put in there will be seen, but well, let's keep it reasonable. It's just a skeleton. So I believe we're all good. Yes, sir. Let's have a quick look. Oh, maybe we forgot about a shield again? No way. On the hand I put just the knuckles. So we have it a little bit distinguished. Okay, so the figure is getting quite good. So time for the last washes. And now we apply the Ossiarch shade on the, you know, the weird gray armor we've done, you know, his second bones, whatever it means. Let's ask their magicians. But for this, we're not doing, you know, the classic shading. We are trying to do some colors in there. So I do it differently. I try to put the dark brown at the tops. You know, you see, it's quite easy to blend with the shades because you actually don't blend anything. You're just putting darker and darker areas on the edges. You know, one layer, it's getting dark. Second layer, it's getting darker. Third layer, it's getting darker. Yes. And now from the other edge, I dry it a bit. As I told you, it's a tricky part because we want to have color. We want to have little bit bone, you know, shade, bone color, but we don't to, you know, feel it too bony because otherwise we will get, you know, figure with one color, which is okay, but not that tabletop we are looking at. Okay, so here are no edges. So I just put random dark in there. You know, just putting the color, not the shade. So we can put it on a different places. Again, these parts are weird, so let's make it a little bit more fun. Okay, and again, if you, for example, here, I believe it's too light, too shiny, the bones, I just put more gray, brown on it. Okay, last thing we do with the brown, the Ossiarch shade, I put a little bit on my sword. I'm not fan of highlighting metallics because I don't believe it looks good. Well, it looks good when you do it very good and do it very hard, but usually it doesn't look very good, so I don't do it. Or often I don't do it. If you do a lord or something like that and you try to be your best general, well, you can do other stuff than this. So I use it on the brass and on the sword, and as you can see, it's just getting a rusty feeling. It's not big deal. It's not, you know, orange sword or any specific technique sword, but with the Agrax Archate you can, you know, get a little rusty look in there. Okay, so I think we are done, and now the last highlights on the armor, and we are done here. Okay, so first of all, the armor. Let's start with the blue. As before, I now get the, you know, the middle blue we used before, and just getting a little bit of edges. As you can see, it's actually a very similar color, but not the same because the Nuln oil, you know, darken it all. So now I try to highlight just half of the shape, you know, not all the shape, just half of it. If you are a fan of the bolts, now it's time that you highlight it. Usually cross my fingers when I do it, not because I'm superstitious, but just because it's easier to put it in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there we go. Again on the other side, let's highlight it a bit. Now we are not using diluted color, so it's a little bit brighter, you know, more saturated. So it's important that we do it only on some parts of the original shape, because we want to get a glow. Well, we are not doing any specific effect because, well, it shouldn't be, you know, electric armor or magic armor. You know, it's just weird stuff like Warhammer is full of. So on part of the edges, not all of it, just part. If you're not fond of those, you know, comic book colors or the bright pastel colors, here it's time for you to use the gray blue, blue-gray, bluish-gray, wolf-gray, and something like that. It then looks a little more dark, you know, not dark in terms of colors, but in terms of feeling, because the blue is a little bit cheap, but we're trying to get the, you know, the original scheme. But in mass, I believe it's good. Okay, and last thing, we have electric blue. And electric blue is very, very light blue. So again, we try to put a bit on bolts and on less part of the shape. You know, it's little alchemy here to put it on the right spots. You know, there's no good recipe for this. You have to try, because I don't believe there is a good ratio and bad ratio and good proportion of blue and not blue, and dark blue and other blues as well. It depends on what you are trying to achieve. For me, this kind of weird blue, you know, the weird electric metallic shield is quite okay. If your, you know, feeling for the Mortek Guard is different, feel free to use it. Again, you can put some grayish tones in there. You can switch to the turquoise or another green tones, because the Mortek Guards are usually used with the green and turquoise. Or you can just go with the white It's not bad, but well, I'll do myself one white layer after everything, but careful with the white. Use white only when all the blues you have and all the blues you are able to mix is used. Okay, so I think the blue is quite good. Let's make it dry, and let's go with the grayish part. Because I use this nice magical blue, I highlight the armor with gray blue or the wolf blue, you know, very super light, sorry, very light gray, of course. It's super light, a little bit grayish, wolf blue in Vallejo, not sure what's in Citadel, you see, but because we use a little brown on it, doesn't really matter where you put the highlights. It's up to you, where you feel it, where you like it. Because again, it's a weird material, so I don't believe it has to be, you know, super realistic. Just let's make it fun. Okay. I believe that you should have colors in there. That's important. If you use a bit of colors on every spot in there, the mini will look cool. If you just used one or two colors on a, you know, on an area, it will look dull, you know, like you don't have put the word work in it, and that's exactly what you haven't done. You didn't put a work in it when you use one color for base and one color for layers. So let's make it fun and don't be lazy, and I believe that's the spirit. Okay, so my color is a little bit, you know, not diluted too much. Maybe it's old. Well, time to buy some new stuff, of course. It's always good time to buy new stuff. But okay. And now with the shield, it's super hard. I won't give you any exact places where to put it because there are really dark areas we use with the brown. So I just try to make it look fun, you know, some random shadows, random highlights. And I know that in a lot of tutorials they always say how the lighting should be from here and there. Well, it could be, but that's not some kind of, you know, dogma, because all the stuff in here are made up. So we want to have it, yes, a little bit realistic, not some completely crazy stuff, even though I like crazy stuff. But we want to have it, you know, the fantasy realism. So fun to look at, fun to paint. Okay. Well, always look on the other parts as well, because I can't make this part very dark or very contrasty if this part it's not, you know. So I try to make the contrast even. But of course, if you have a part from leather and part from metal, you can make different, very different contrasts. But it's not this case because all this stuff is weird. To be honest, I like to make the back of the shield more on the leather side. You see, I left the gray here very, very brownish, because I believe when you look at this side, you don't get it that it's the bone. You just see that it's a part of the shield with leather strap and wooden parts, so you don't have to yell it's bones all the time. Okay. Let's see. Well, I believe it's okay. And now maybe we can use the same color or the white. It depends on you. I use the same color. And put the final highlights on the armor. But be very careful because these parts are really visible. See? If you don't like the layers because it looks too hard, you can always put a little bit of normal oil over there again. Yes, now here I'm overlapping a bit because I always try to get nice colors, nice effects rather than details. Because details, you know, if you focus, if you get a new brush, it's not that hard. But the color feeling and the brushstroke technique, it's the things you should be training. Okay. On the back, just few spots. You don't want to be greedy with white. Also, it's quite easier here because I don't have real white, but grayish blue, or just gray, bluish gray. That's the word I'm looking for. Okay. Well, I believe we're done in here. Of course, there are a lot of stuff you can do to have it, you know, better. But for example, it's good if you play with the metallics parts. I don't like to put more iron in here, but it's okay to, you know, the copper is highlighting quite well. If you wish, you can make more detailed armor. Here I have a terrible overlap. Oh, it's dried already. Okay, so I put in a bit non-oil there afterwards. You can fill a bit with the color scheme. You can fill a bit with the highlights here and the brown washes on the armor, on the gray ones. But I believe we are done in here. Well, let's put him on the base and let's see the final image. Okay, so here is the final result. We did a little bit of basing, you know, the snakebite leather on the base and Martian iron earth, you know, the technical color, little bush and 2 stones from the cork, you know, from the wine. And I believe it's quite quite good result. It takes us about one and a quarter an hour. And I have here another guys like him. As you can see, those are the techniques I've shown you, but this type is more brass metal instead of the gray. Here you can see how it look like when you use more bony color. Not bad, but as I told you, it's like one color miniature. But if you choose well the color of the armor, you can do some more wild stuff, for example green and purple. It could be okay as well. So here it goes, our good tabletop miniature. Glad you like it. Don't forget to subscribe, like and so on. See you in the next videos. Bye.